You know, all this trash talk I've been doing may come back and bite me in the ass. Forget that. Heidi ho, Arkansas Pilgrim here again. This video is probably going to be kind of long and rambling, so I'll give you a heads up about it right away. Getting a bit discouraged, I think, at least battling some discouragement because, well, a lot of different things going on besides all the craziness in the world. But the discouragement specifically here is about my garden. I don't know, seems like I'm falling farther behind, and, well, let me show you this one thing here. These are my tomato and pepper seedlings, and I will show you my cabbage seedlings later. They were all planted at the same time, and you can see that in my planting seedlings, or starting seeds video. And, well, that was about 2 months ago. I actually, if you look at these seeds, on either side are the tomatoes. And those look like 2 or 3 weeks old, not 2 months old. But the peppers seem to be doing great. And I'll show you later out in my garden, my cabbage seedlings. They're better than the tomatoes, but not as good as the peppers. Well, it's May now. More than a week into May, and I'm just planting out my cabbage, which, you know, is a cool weather plant, you know. So I was like, well, wait a minute, is that too late? What am I gonna do? Well, you know, I should have planted these sooner. Well, we had that freeze, you know, a bad freeze. You know, those plants wouldn't have survived. And then since then, we've had several downpours where, you know, things have gotten really muddy, and I don't know how well that would have been on them either. So I was getting kind of discouraged about that, and I thought, I've planned out my garden where I'm going to plant things, and I'm starting to look at it like, well, wait a minute, I should have started my snap peas. You know, reading the instructions on the bag, when I was ready to go out and plant them, it says, you know, these will die off in summer heat. I'm like, wow, and there's 70 days to maturity. Well, summer heat, I mean, you know, it's May, you know, 70 days is well into July. It's in the south. There's going to be summer heat. Oh, okay, well, I'm going to have to replant. And I'm looking like, well, I have to restart my tomatoes because these are so bad. You're just getting overwhelmed by all this. So I decided I'm going to go ahead and plant things out anyway. But I started thinking about it. I'm like, you know, why am I in this predicament? And it suddenly occurred to me that, and I need to actually issue an apology to those of you who watched my starting seeds video, because I give the impression that I've actually started seeds before inside and transplanted them out. Just the way I was talking, I listened to that video again, and I realized, like, you know, I've planned this before. All the things I said about how, you know, I want to plant at final spacing rather than transplanting several times, and I use this kind of soil and all that. Well, yeah, I've always planned that in all these times where I've planned on planting a garden and then, you know, not done it. But this is actually the first time that I've ever started seeds inside to transplant outside. And so I apologize to if I gave the impression that I actually knew what I was talking about. And one of the things that reminded me of it was I was trying to harden the seeds off. And, you know, and I was following Big Blue House Homestead's instructions. And actually, you need to go and check out Sarah over at Big Blue House Homestead. She's got a lot of great advice on starting and growing and transplanting, you know, seeds and plants for preparing your garden. She's got all kinds of stuff going. You really need to go check her out. And she's been supportive of me on my channel and watching and commenting on my videos, and I really appreciate that. So anyway, one of these things that got me discouraged was I went out and started hardening my seeds off, and I mostly was following her instructions, but I actually had them out a couple days because they were we had some nights, 2 nights in a row, where the temperature was basically the same as the day. And it was a little bit cloudy, so that it wasn't going to burn, the plants in the sun. So I went and I set them out, and I left them out overnight for a couple nights. But I came out and checked them, and they were doing fine. And then I didn't check the weather, and we had a downpouring thunderstorm, and it just beat the crap out of these seedlings. They were all laying down, and I picked them all up, and I poured the water out of the pans because it was full of water, and I kind of been nursing them back to health, what health they actually have, which is very little. And then I noticed that for whatever reason in my tomatoes I didn't use popsicle sticks and wooden dividers to divide up the different kinds. I'd had some pieces of paper. Well, they were all gone. And I think I have actually figured out, there's 2 different types of tomatoes. And one of the trays is full of Romas, and the other one has a little bit of Romas, and the rest are Rutgers tomatoes. And, well, just because of one of them had some seedlings that didn't come up, so there was like a big space in the middle. And I think I remember what that was. And so, but that was just another frustrating, discouraging thing to happen, with these tomatoes. So, like I said a minute ago, how did I get myself into this predicament? Well, hey, part of my ramblings are going to be finally talking to you about my greenhouse, because having what I used to have a greenhouse, was why I haven't had seedlings started and transplanted, because I had a greenhouse I was growing things in. But there's a story to that. So let's go out rather than you can just sitting here watching me talk. I'll go walk around and show you the greenhouse and talk and ramble there. Well, here it is. What is now a chicken coop, chicken coop and chicken run. This was actually a greenhouse at one point. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I started off square foot gardening in Southern California. My dad had actually tried to get me into gardening. He gave me the Square Foot Gardening book by Mel Bartholomew. And to me, at the time, I was just like, gardening, that sounds like work and pulling weeds, which actually what gardening is. I was kind of spot on there, but the rewards of it, weren't, I didn't realize those about growing your own food and tasting stuff that tastes better than store-bought and all that. But my dad passed away, and I made 4x4 planting beds out in the backyard in Southern California. Well, I had one season of growing, which was marginally successful, because basically where I lived was kind of trying to grow in a gravel quarry. And then we moved out here to Arkansas, and that kind of stopped it. So what I did, right here, I put 2 4x4 raised beds. I didn't even know the term raised beds at the time. I just called them planter beds. And had a little bit of success there. But my dog, actually one of them right there, she and my couple dogs kept walking through it, causing a problem. And I think, I'm going to make this bigger. And then I started reading about, bigger, there we go. Started reading about things like, how do you protect against rabbits or deer? And they say, deer, you need a 12-foot fence that they can jump over anything shorter. I'm like, my gosh, what am I going to do there? But I'm still thinking raised beds. Well, I thought, well, hey, I can build an enclosure around it, but why don't I just put a top on it instead, and that'll keep the deer out. Well, and it didn't have the roof that you see there now. It was just all chicken wire. And part of that, and you can see I actually had a bunch of leftover lumber from building my deck. And it turns out it's like support beams I didn't need, had all these 2x4s. So I put put this together. And you can see these diagonals here, you know, they're holding up the trusses inside. And, you know, that chicken coop wasn't in there. But, you know, I got this all put together, and in the process of it, I also decided, hey, why don't I make a greenhouse of it? So I bought greenhouse plastic, and it's supposedly 4-year UV protected polyethylene sheet. And I made a way to put it on and take it off, which, yeah, hey, that's an engineer thing. Yeah, try to do it. If you're gonna do something, you might as well do it complicated, right? Well, it actually wasn't too bad. I had actually thought it out fairly well, and it was fairly easy to put on and off. And I'm not gonna go into any more details about that, but putting it on and off wasn't the problem. I had a basic misunderstanding of how greenhouses work, or what you use them for, and what most gardeners use them for. And I was partly misled by some stuff that I read online about greenhouses. How am I going to do this? Well, I read about a passive greenhouse in Canada, of all places. You know, passive meaning you don't actively heat it, have a heater or a cooler in there. Well, in the wintertime, with greenhouse plastic sheet on everything, and I didn't even have a vent to begin with. I did add vents the second season. Well, in the daytime, it can get over 100 there. It was actually literally one day, it was 0 degrees outside and snowing. And then after the snow actually slid off the roof, and this was just plastic roof. This metal roof was not on there. It was just plastic sheeting and chicken wire underneath. It was over 100 degrees inside. So what I did was I basically roasted everything inside every day, and it would evaporate all the water out of the dirt, and then recondense up on the inside, the plastic on the inside, but it wouldn't fall back in. It would just run down the sides. And, you know, and when it was raining, my daughter would come out and water. She'd have to fight through the rain to come out here and water the planter beds inside. Okay, so that's just shows how stupid that was. But at nighttime, it would get down to freezing. The plants wouldn't freeze. It would protect them, but it would, but it's too cold to actually produce. I planted sugar snap peas, and they grew, but they didn't produce anything. The only positive thing was in March, when I took the plastic off, I actually had some sugar snap peas already growing that could start to produce. So that worked out okay. But eventually it just, I was planning on growing stuff during the winter like they do in greenhouses, but those are actively heated, and you add heat or you put on fans when it gets too hot because of the sun, even though it's the winter. And you know, so this was just a disaster as a greenhouse. But something else, but I did use it as in the method that most people use greenhouses for, which is starting your seeds. Well, to me, I wasn't starting the seeds, I was planting them in place in the greenhouse because I had planter beds. And actually, here's a picture of the planter beds of the way I had it set up. See, I had several different planter beds. This is by the way, is 20 feet long by 16 feet. And that's done because actually I had a bunch of 20-foot boards, and it worked out to be able to do it without having to do much cutting. But inside, I had little walkways, so I had like 16-foot long planter beds, and they were divided up for, you know, the one in the back there is for vertical stuff, for growing up like sugar snap peas or vining things. And then the rest, I had tomatoes, and you know, mostly tomatoes, but also some squash and some other stuff. Well, I just came out and just planted them out here, and it was in a greenhouse. And it was one of the reasons, like, I made this huge greenhouse. You're probably wondering why it was so huge, is because I didn't know how you're supposed to use a greenhouse. I used to look and say, wow, you have a 6 by 8 foot greenhouse you can buy. You can't grow anything in that. Well, you're right, you can't. That's not what it's for. It's for starting seeds. Well, that's what brought me to where I am now, which is I was used to just planting stuff out in place early because it was, you know, in a greenhouse, and the seeds would start and it would be maintained well. But I had no idea about transplanting and how to care for the seedlings actually in the pans and trays where they're started. So that's my greenhouse story. Well, actually, as you see here, it ended up getting changed into a chicken coop. And, you know, a friend of mine that builds metal buildings had some stuff left over, and he gave me that. I went and I stripped all the chicken wire off the top and put that steel onto the roof, so now chickens have shade. And then I built that chicken coop in there. Okay, you've been just staring at the chicken coop and listening to me for a while. Let me go over and show you what I started doing, because, well, I was getting discouraged, and I thought, well, I'm gonna, hey, here's a concept, do what I can with what I have where I am. Okay, so there are my 2-month-old cabbage starts. See how big they are. Like, wow, man, that's kind of spindly. Well, I got them. I'm gonna go ahead and plant them out. If they don't grow, well, hey, I'm still gonna give it a shot. So I came out, and here's this, here's the main section I've shown you before. And actually, yeah, you can see where I'm going to be planting. Actually, I already have planted out over there. I've planted peppers, because the peppers actually did grow properly. I've marked off walkways, and actually I've made the 2-foot wide walkways, and someplace I have 4-foot and 3-foot wide planting beds to do in square foot methods. And see, yeah, now I'm rambling. But over here, this is at a different angle. Let me show it to you. You probably can't read, but you can see that, you know, they're like this, because this actually has a slope going this way, and you want to plant your rows. I'm going to plant my rows so it's perpendicular to the slope. Otherwise, you get water running down and rushing stuff off it. It's tough. Anyway, as you can see, I've planted my little seedlings out here in the elements. And some of these seedlings are pretty sad, but I thought, heck, I'm going to plant every single one that grew and see what happens. Rather than sit around and cry and whine about how things aren't going well. Anyway, that's what I've got done now, because I finally said, hey, I've got to get out here and get this going, and I'm going to have to redo many other things. I'm going to go ahead and plant the tomatoes out there, and the scrawny looking seeds, and I'm probably going to plant a seed right next to them, and then the one that grows the best is I'm going to keep. But here is a question, and I probably should have asked this at the beginning, because, you know, people may have already given up on this video and gone off to watch something interesting. I think my problem with my seed starts, you know, my idea of planting them in a bigger container with some wide space to give them room to grow, rather than just, you know, growing them, you know, in the little, you know, egg cartons and then transplanting 3 steps before you plant them out into the garden. Which apparently may, you know, these seedlings have come up, you know, I thought they had plenty of room. Hey, they've got plenty of room for roots to grow around, and they didn't. All of these, even the ones that were, even the peppers that grew pretty well, you know, they had more roots, but these, which are the same age, they didn't have very much of a root structure. And I'm guessing, and if, like, hey, Big Blue House Homestead, you can answer the question for me. Or, hey, Homestead Aquarius, or Mark, Arkansas Woodcutter, or, hey, Johnny Boy. I mean, oh, no, not Johnny Boy. I mean, Johnny Redneck. Is it the fact that it's too shallow, the roots hit the bottom, and then for whatever reason, however plants work, they decide there's not enough room to grow, and they don't? Especially since the container's metal, and maybe that messes with the root system. That's what I'm guessing as to why planting them like this didn't work. And if I'm going to do this in the future, I need to use a deeper, either go ahead and just transplant into deeper things, or use deeper pans, which I'm not really sure how to do, since you know, these pans are, well, they were freebies, and I'm not sure you're going to find a pan that's that deep. It's one of those good ideas that just wasn't that good of an idea. But I would really welcome comments as to, hey, any ideas as to why these didn't grow, And yeah, I didn't feed them very well either. I was just, because I hadn't done that when I had my planter beds out here. I already had really good soil in there that I put into the planter beds. And just the thought that I would need to feed the seedlings didn't really occur to me until I actually heard it in one of, I think it was Mark's video, Arkansas Woodcutter's video about feeding seedlings, and was like, oh wow, maybe I should do that. And actually, I never got around to it. Well, I got around to it eventually, but like I said, everybody has all kinds of different things going on, and I had a lot of things going on, and I never did, so I ended up with seedling like this, or those pathetic tomato seedlings you saw. So at any rate, that's enough rambling for now. Any ideas and help would be appreciated. And hey, go Team Woodcutter, and hey, go Team Will It Grow. This is a collaboration competition, and I'd appreciate any help you can offer. And like I said before, do what you can with what you have where you are. And God bless y'all, and see you next time.